And since this is the last panel, we can take questions until 8 or 9 o'clock this evening if you wish. I see the microphone coming. Are there any questions for this panel?
Yeah, question, maybe go to Lorna first, but it kind of ties off the questions I got in my panel is, how do you push new technologies or pushing that envelope? So my question to you, kind of on part of your slide, was the best available technology. So we've seen other industries like Bessie, the offshore folks have this best available, safest technology. I know they're still figuring out how that evaluated, but interested in your perspective on others that have implemented it. How well does it go? What are the challenges? Things like that. And what would the appetite potentially, if PHMSA wanted to consider that, how would it potentially work?
Well, I'd say that PHMSA and the NEB are actually doing that already today. So the PHMSA R&D Forum is a really good way to get everybody together to understand what the threats are at an industry level so that they can actually focus the R&D where it's needed. Gas and liquid are different. So there's going to be different solutions from a technology perspective depending on what it is that you're managing. And every system's a little bit different too. So we have a batch system, which means that we move multiple products. Some people have what we call a bullet line, where they have a single product that goes point A to point B. So there's different ways that you need to be able to manage those lines based on the type of operation, the operation environment, and the operation philosophy. And then also, what is the environment it's sitting in? So do you run through really rocky terrain? So depending on what it is that you're trying to manage, the technologies that you use are going to be specific to the threats that would exist to the safe operation of your pipeline system. So you look at your full system, you don't look at one technology. There's no such a thing as a silver bullet. I think we talked about that a little bit earlier. So it'll be a combination of different technologies that give you the desired outcome. Even from a crack management perspective, we run several different types of crack tools so that we can take all that information, layer it one on top of the other, so that you get a full picture of all the potential things that might be in a pipeline system versus referring to a single one to give you all the answers.
Yeah, so the comment earlier was it's not rocket science, and we know we can run threat analysis. We know how to do that. We look at the threats in our system, but every system is a little different. Diameters, affects sensor spacing, the threat affects the kind of tool you're, so they're all, every line, even if there's even at a macro level they look very similar, there's always those nuances and differences that make it challenging. It's one of the biggest challenges.
But I think the common theme though is the use of data-driven technologies versus what we used to do in the past, which is more of the visual inspection. So when you have hard data, you make better decisions.
One of the ways to advance the technology is to actually apply it to real-world situations. And it seems to me that PHMSA has taken the position that they want to do that through the vehicle of a special permit. And the strings attached to a special permit sometimes seem problematic in terms of being able to meet all those conditions to actually apply the technology. Would you care to comment about how that process could be simplified so you can actually use it in the real world as opposed to in the laboratory?
So I think we'll let Alan speak first, and then if I don't like his answer, I'll chime in.
Yeah, who are we talking to, John? Special permits are a tool, and just for those that don't know, if an operator wants to vary from the regulation to use new technology or to vary from it for some other reason and has an alternative, we entertain special permits. And for us to consider those, the solution or the variance from the code to follow the code needs to at least be equal to or safer than following the code. So that's the going-in position that we have as we assess any special permit application we get. For us to consider it, we need to come out of it at least equal to what following the code would be. Special permits are a tool that we use for new technology to try things out. for potential future code revisions. We did that with plastic pipe, for instance, some of the PA products, the alternate MELP special permits we issued a number of years ago. We issued special permits before we actually developed regulations. Typically, a special permit has conditions tied to it, and I think that's what you're referring to. Those conditions are what we develop to, because of the uncertainty related to the variance, or to make sure that there's no uncertainty that we end up with equal to following the code, equal to the, the safety of just following the code. We come out with conditions and special permits. And those are, the ones I haven't necessarily heard that, they're impractical to implement. They're quite robust requirements, but there are things that we implement just to ensure safety as we go forward. But, they're not really designed to be, not practical. Actually, we feel quite the contrary. They actually institute best practices, if you will, to manage pipeline safety. Yeah, sure.
So to me, that's a bit of the performance-based versus prescriptive too. If the performance-based requirement is to make sure you're managing the integrity of your line and you can provide the appropriate technologies to meet that requirement, that might be a performance-based objective that you could then reach versus needing a special permit.
And if I can just add the one other thing too, I said I would say something else. So if I had my druthers, I would love there to be a permit called a research permit, something that allows you to test a technology without the requirements associated that would say, if you find X, Y, Z, you have to go in, you have to dig it, you have to do whatever. You'd always do validation on your new research that comes in. You need to make sure that what it's telling you is what you're seeing in the field. But if you're not using it as an inspection on your pipeline system, if you're running it as a research activity, I would love there to be a separate permit specifically for technology testing. And I don't think that I've seen that that's kind of a category without all of those requirements associated with it today.